Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. We come to you worldwide every day, Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Charlton and Big C Sports. And we call ourselves the $1 Million Show. Today is June the 29th, 2016. We're coming up on the 4th of July. I want to thank all of our listeners out there tweeting in from Latin America, London, England, Berlin, Germany, and Canada. Even getting some people from Australia and also Africa that listen to Charlton and Big C, so thank you for that. And also, Big C, of course, we love the great United States of America. We love sports, Big C, and we know that throughout the world, sports is something that brings people together. But there's also a few foolish things that have happened lately over in Turkey, and then there's an incident at the White House today. So we can't be naive to the fact that we live in a world that's safe because we have a presence, a military and police presence. So basically, just a few of your thoughts on that, how sports is a relief for people, but there's also some real things going on in the world too, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Charlton, this world strife that we're dealing with every day throughout the planet, is very troubling. But, the biggest part about it is that we have so much and so many media outlets that draw on this. And what it does, it incites fear in the general public, but there also should be an awareness by the general public. But also, because they advertise so much about the negativities going on, you give those nuts out there, Charlton, a blueprint of how to attack normal people, everyday people throughout the world, Charlton. You lay out the security plans of facilities. You let them have insight without them sending people in, Charlton. The news used to be the news. Now it's tabloidism, and with everybody's rush put out the story, Charlton, they don't think about the security of the civilians throughout the world that they're putting in jeopardy and peril by giving all this insight to these so-called terrorists and other nut groups around the world, Charlton.
Yeah, there was a day that we had this movie by Will Smith, and I think it was called Enemy of the State, and it actually chronicled how there's so much high-tech information that's used to keep people safe. So hopefully, we all got to live for freedom. There's always a cost for freedom, but you can't be afraid because, got to enjoy your life, Big C. And speaking of enjoying your life, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And you can only test drive it new at your Northern California Cadillac dealer. And when you go down there, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, when we talk about everything that's happening in the world of sports, and you do such a great job of blending Hollywood and the sports world, and I know there's talk about free agency and how the new contracts are coming out for professional sports, and there's talk that LeBron James bought a house in Bel Air, which is Southern California. In fact, the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, that same neighborhood, and Kevin Durant also lives in L.A., but that doesn't mean they're going to go down and play for the Lakers, even though I think it would be a good thing, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Charlton, who does not own multiple homes when you're a multi-millionaire? Not just in sports, but in the business world.
Yeah.
So, to have a home to go to versus staying in hotels and all of that, you have a place you own.
Yeah.
So LeBron James owning a home in Bel Air, we saw where this past year he's gotten this $1 billion contract from Nike.
Yeah.
We know that Kevin Durant had gotten a $200 million contract years ago from Nike.
Yeah.
And this, Charlton, this is not talking about the salaries and other endorsements that these players are involved in. So for them, buying real estate is an investment.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they have it in Miami, whether they have it in Los Angeles, whether they have it in New York, it's an investment. That's a proper business decision. So they have good advisors that are talking to them, Charlton, about where to put their money, getting ROI, return on their investment.
Yeah.
That's what you get when you buy in the proper neighborhood. Now, you don't hear about the players buying a house in Cleveland.
Well, you don't hear about the owners and how many mansions they own around the world, Big C. A lot of entertainers, they have houses in Europe. They have houses in South America. And they have houses throughout the United States of America, too. I just think it's ironic that when you have young black kids are young black men. I still call them kids because they're in their 30s and 20s. But when they own more than one residential property, it's breaking news that they may be moving there. But that's not the case. People own multiple properties all over the world, Big C. In fact, I hear you've had real estate all over the continent too, Big C.
Well, let's keep that suppressed. We're not trying to alert the IRS to what's going on with the show. We want to keep the moonshine. We want to keep the real estate underneath the blanket. Okay.
Now, since when are you good old boys down south concerned about the IRS? I had a great grandfather, then he ran moonshine too. So, and you hear about that in the stories, but I don't think he ever paid taxes on it. I don't think they can come after his heirs for that, Big C. So I think we're pretty safe on that. But when you talk about that, there was some talk that the Golden State Warriors actually met with Kevin Durant in the Hamptons over on the East Coast, where a lot of well-to-do people live. But a lot of well-to-do people, they live where they want to live because money buys you options, Big C. And I just think as more people get wealthy, they'll travel too. More people travel to Dubai because it's one of the wealthiest regions of the world now. It doesn't mean they're moving to Dubai, Big C, but when you have that kind of money, you do what you want to do because you have the option to. I just think for a lot of young black men, they're not expected to go outside their neighborhood, Big C. So I just think that's why it makes news. Your thoughts on that, Big C?
Well, it always becomes a troubling point for a part of society. Years ago.
So people are going to move out of Bel Air now because LeBron moved in?
Well, years ago, I was at a show backstage with Chris Rock, and we were sitting up talking. And then when he went out on stage, he explained to the audience that, the neighborhood he lived in New Jersey only had 4 blacks that lived in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That was Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, and Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And his neighbor was a dentist, and he always questioned how many teeth does a dentist have to pull to live in that neighborhood, multi-million-dollar houses, because he was rich.
Right.
The guys next door to him didn't even really work. So when you look at that, there's always been an outcry when blacks have moved into certain neighborhoods. Charlton, if you remember Compton, and you're too young to remember Compton, but Compton was all white at one time.
Yeah, Los Angeles, Yes,
Compton, Los Angeles. And when blacks started moving in, whites moved out. As in many major cities across the United States, as they would call them inner city neighborhoods, whites would move to the suburbs.
Yeah.
Once blacks started buying real estate. Blacks only wanted a piece of the American pie. They didn't bring violence and vandalism. They wanted a decent neighborhood to live in. What happened, though, when whites moved out of these neighborhoods, Charlton, they also took their businesses.
Yeah, the jobs go too.
And jobs, and it also lowered the tax base in these cities, Charlton. So they did not receive the city services 10 to 20 years later after these African-American families moved in as they were receiving 20 years prior to that. So a lot of these communities and neighborhoods became dilapidated and run down because the tax base had changed. Cities allow that, Charlton. It's not from African-Americans. It's not from Hispanics. It's not from Asians. This is what cities create. If you still keep that impactful tax base there, no city will ever suffer. But that's what we see in inner city schools versus suburban schools, Charlton, when you see these palatial high schools and junior highs being built versus going into a place where they can't even buy books. This is created through city councils and Congress when you look at politics.
Well, when you think of politics, I want to bring up the subject that, the NFL football is the king of sports in the United States. I know that soccer's going on right now, and we're talking about the Olympics coming up, but everybody loves football, Big C. And I look at a quarterback, you brought up this thing about your skin color is almost parallel with how much money you make on your contract. And even though you have Cam Newton, who was the NFL's MVP, took the Carolina Panthers to the Super Bowl, he also took Auburn. They won some SEC championships when he was at Auburn and some big bowl games as well.
And they also won the national championship. They beat Oregon down in Arizona.
Well, they cheated Oregon. That running back was down on the ground, but they had some SEC officials. But okay, we'll give it.
That's always West Coast pride. You will bring the clean to the game in Texas, so you'll have something to wipe up.
Well, USC is going to make amends for that. What happened to Oregon down there when they played the University of Auburn. But I look at Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck was at Stanford, never won a Rose Bowl at Stanford, and I think he's a good quarterback. Is he an elite quarterback? No. Look at his record. He completes 58%, but he is white, and America is still searching for the next great white hope. the way they've lost that out in boxing. They're not looking for the great white hope in boxing. So MMA is real popular. They're not looking for the great white hope anymore in basketball. Larry Bird was great, but no one has really been on par with Larry Bird since then. And I know people say color doesn't matter, but that's always been the position that they held as something that they would not want to open up to other people. So even when Cam Newton becomes the NFL's MVP and takes his team to the Super Bowl, the Carolina Panthers, and they give Andrew Luck, who has a losing record compared to the guy they brought in that backed him up last year, and has never reached the Super Bowl, but he's getting the biggest contract in the history of football for a quarterback, and I just have to say he happens to be Caucasian, Big C. Is there anything more than just color that determines how much he gets? Because it can't be based on his one-loss record, Big C.
No, Charlton, it's only based on color, but they'll call color potential, okay?
Yeah.
Well, when you look at that draft that Andrew Luck came out in, he was the number 1 overall pick in that draft.
Yeah.
The number 2 quarterback selected was RG3, who had also taken his team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
He had some injuries since then. But the best quarterback in that draft, Charlton, was Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Taken in the 3rd round by the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know if Russell was, you could really consider that he's done much in his career, you know.
Yeah, Super Bowls don't count.
Well, you know, last season he set an NFL record of 30 touchdowns and 3 interceptions over the last 8 games of the season, Charlton.
Yeah.
He also has taken his team to 2 Super Bowls, 1 place shy of winning consecutive Super Bowls. But I don't know if you can call that success in an African-American quarterback when we look at the NFL and, you know, the non-success that a lot of Anglo quarterbacks can have.
Yeah,
if you want to do
you're right.
a true comparison of quarterbacks in the NFL, Charlton, look no further than Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, out of USC.
Who played in the Pac-12 along with Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
In fact, they played against each other.
Yeah.
They have the same quarterback rating in the NFL, the same completion percentage.
Yeah.
But Mark Sanchez is on his 3rd franchise, Charlton.
Yeah. And I think
he
that's
was originally drafted in the 1st round by the Jets.
By the Jets, yep.
Ended up with the Eagles. Now he's in Denver.
Yeah.
So here it is. You've made a quarterback who took you to 2 consecutive NFC Championship games when he was with the Jets.
Yeah.
Okay? Which is more success than what Andrew Luck has had.
Yeah.
And you're making him a journeyman, but you're making Andrew Luck the so-called face of the new NFL, Charlton.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Big C, because I know you talked about Doug Williams when we were at Salem Media, how Doug Williams took the Washington Redskins to the Super Bowl through 5.
Never got another snap.
Yeah, 5 first-half touchdown passes in the first half, and they won the game. In fact, I think they beat Denver in that game. But
yes, they did. They trounced Denver.
They trounced Denver and John Elway's team, but he never got the chance to start again. And I say this because people on radio and TV, whether it's radio or podcast or broadcast, a lot of people just won't point out the obvious. If I'm an employer and I'm looking to hire someone to run my organization, and I look at people with the same resume, same record, and I give one guy $140 million, and the other guy, I give him $14 million over 2 years. I got to ask myself, what's the reason? Both have been injured. Andrew Luck was injured. I have Cam Newton that just won the MVP of the league. I have Russell Wilson, who's gone to the Super Bowl twice for the Seattle Seahawks. But this kid, because he's Caucasian, and you bring up Mark Sanchez, and they're trying to say, can Mark Sanchez fit anywhere? Well, the answer is yes, because his record's the same as Andrew Luck. They have the same percentage completion rate, Big C, about 58%. But I just look at how they coddle the Caucasian quarterback, and I know people don't want to hear it because they're so used to it happening without being questioned about it. But the next time you're a fan and you're spending $100 for a ticket, and one guy's getting $140 million, okay? $140 million, and he doesn't even win. He's never even gone to the Super Bowl. But they keep telling you the same thing they did with Carson Wentz and Jeff Goff, that they're going to be the next great white hope for the NFL. And it's not. Now they're saying Carson Wentz might not even be ready to play, Big C. We were saying that when they drafted the kid. And I want the kid to succeed. But I've been in the media game so long, and I've seen the complexion behind the screen and behind the microphone. And 9 out of 10 is Caucasian guys. And I know a lot of them are my friends and have been my friends. But they know the door's been open for them and not people who look like they're people of color. It's also open for Caucasian women. Now, that is the broadcast side of it. So when these same broadcasters, 9 out of 10 are Caucasian, and they play up the white quarterback as a great white hope, but when you look at his record, he's no better than the guy that they keep trading from team to team. The bias is just also perpetuated by media, Big C. Your thoughts on that, or am I out of line?
You're not out of line, Charlton. You're completely on track. when you look at how these quarterbacks, and even a lot of baseball pitchers, and if you get a so-called decent white basketball player, how they're portrayed throughout society, is that they're always going to be good. And it's not true. You know, when you look at them statistically, as we compared Andrew Luck and Mark Sanchez.
Yeah.
But if you go back, Matt Hasselbeck played last year for the Indianapolis Colts. Had a better record than Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
But he was forced into retirement, Charlton, because he had the winning record on the team. Luck had the losing record as the starting quarterback. But when you look at what Andrew Luck has done overall throughout his career,
he's hyped.
Than his freshman year,
he's overhyped.
It's been hyped.
Yeah.
It's been hyped, Charlton. When you talk about potential of a quarterback, and you look no further than guys that are in the NFL now, you think about a Matthew Stafford, who has always been hyped.
Yeah.
Then Detroit.
Out of Georgia.
You look at a Matt Ryan, out of Boston College, who's in Atlanta.
Yeah.
You look at these quarterbacks.
And Wes Ryan won one playoff game, Big C? One playoff game?
One playoff game. Atlanta's won one playoff game in 11 years.
And that's with a $125 million contract for a Caucasian quarterback.
$125 million contract. Joe Flacco hasn't done anything to the Super Bowl. Got the second most guaranteed NFL money of a player behind Luck's new contract now. So when you look at these players, Charlton, and Russell Wilson is nowhere in the talk about making that kind of money. Cam Newton, who had the second best winning record in NFL history last year.
Yeah.
Going into the Super Bowl. You don't hear him being talked about in that type of money, Charlton. So when we look at the African-American quarterbacks that are starting in the NFL, these players are not looked at on the same economical, nor are they looked at on the same analytical level mentally as far as process in the even though they only win on the field, Charlton. They don't get in trouble and they win on the field, but you find a way to pay the white quarterbacks, not Denver, but Indianapolis got rid of Peyton Manning, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? They got rid of Peyton Manning, saying that he was washed up. And I don't know if he had any success after he left Indianapolis.
He went to Mile High because something's legal up in Denver. He went to Mile High and he got them to another Super Bowl, Big C.
Okay, so he went to a medicinal state. And, he got the team to the Super Bowl in the first year. Wow. Wasn't Andrew Luck was supposed to have done that? Matter of fact, I think he took Denver to 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, he did. They got beaten by Seattle, and they also found a way to Cam Newton had a slippery football in California where it's a lot of humidity, Big C.
So Andrew Luck was doing what you and I were doing at the time.
We're watching.
He was watching the game, okay? This is the guy that's worth $140 million, but he was doing what you and I do, watching the game and doing interviews.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's the white NFL potential, Charlton. That's all it's based on.
Well, it's funny. They have, and it crosses all sports because Randy Levine, the Yankees president for baseball, he had a statement on ESPN that you reporters obviously have nothing more to do than write about the things and the nonsense that happens in sports. And because he has the money, he feels he has the right to say whatever he wants to say, and that no one has any credibility because he owns, he's the president of the Yankees. But I'll go back to this Andrew Luck thing. And before we get on Andrew Luck, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealer, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the all super powerful 600 horsepower M7, also known as a 760 Li. And when you're driving it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, going back to Andrew Luck, and this is about the quarterback. Now, think about it. LeBron James buys a house in Bel Air, California. I think he's worth $1 billion, so he can probably buy a house on the moon if he wanted to, Big C. And then also Durant lives in Los Angeles, too, or has a house there. You think about Luck. They never talked about Luck the way they talked about these NFL or the NBA players that were up for the draft just a couple of days ago, Big C. No one talks about his wingspan. No one talks about him bench pressing 400 pounds. No one's saying he has a great football IQ. They want to praise him as the next great white hope. And I think about that. Kevin Hogan, who preceded him or succeeded him at Stanford under David Shaw, he actually took Stanford to a Rose Bowl twice, and they won 2 out of 3 years. He went to the Rose Bowl and won it. Now, I bring that up because he had a better record than this kid who was under Harbaugh. And I'm not knocking Luck, but just numbers-wise, he doesn't earn the money. He doesn't deserve it. He hasn't proven it. David Shaw, the coach of the Pac-12 champion Stanford Cardinals, he sent more players to the NFL than any other team in the Pac-12. He's the 8th highest paid coach in the Pac-12. He happens to be African American, Big C. But you take your team to the Rose Bowl 2 out of 3 years, it gives you the 8th highest paid in the Pac-12. Most of the coaches ranked ahead of him happen to be Caucasian, and nobody talks about it because we're supposed to be happy just to have a job. There's something going on in society that still happens the same way it happened in Jim Crow. How do we stop letting it happen without talking about it, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, didn't USC just hire a new coach this past season?
Well, yeah, Clay Helton, and they got Lynn Swan back as the AD as well.
And Clay Helton is a new coach, never been a head coach in the Pac-12, is making more than David Shaw.
Yeah, that's a joke.
How ironic is that, Charlton? That is one of the biggest jokes. Here's a guy who's won multiple conference championships.
Yeah.
Have had more players drafted from his team than any other coach in that conference during his tenure.
Yeah.
Also, had probably had the best individual player, well, at least
in McCaffrey.
McCaffrey,
yeah.
McCaffrey in the country last year, who set an all-purpose yardage record.
Yeah.
And this is an African-American coach who is tutoring this young man, Charlton.
Yeah.
And running a great academic program at Stanford. You don't hear about his players getting in trouble.
Yeah.
When we talk about a coach telling parents that their players are going to graduate,
he's an example. He's an example. Yeah.
Look at the graduation rate and the GPA that the players at Stanford have under an African-American coach in David Shaw, Charlton, versus the other universities in that conference when you look at what they have.
Yeah, well, see, Big C.
So he's basically being penalized
for being brilliant.
Real student athletes who graduate who do not get in trouble.
Yeah.
That's not worth any money, Charlton.
Well, see, Big C, I think that's so incredible to talk about that because outside of Charlton and Big C Sports, you really want to hear about it. And again, you're going to hear about college football this year. They're going to talk about how big and fast some of these young black boys are, and some of the white kids, how erudite and how hard they study and how they already have a major or maybe even graduated. I'm not saying everybody, so I'm not making a pejorative statement, but as the media, I'm very sensitive to it because I have a young boy and they talk about him the same way. He's an honor roll kid as well as my daughter, but when it comes to that theme that Jim Brown talked about, and I know Jim talked about it for one day when they had the Muhammad Ali celebration, but if people don't want to bring it up, it's just going to be the same old garbage, the same old good old boy system. But in congratulations, Andrew Luck, you have a worse record than a lot of players that play your position, but you're getting more money because you're hyped by this system that wants a white quarterback. They want the next John Elway to stand in the pocket so they can say, hey, this guy's cerebral. Even look at a guy like Troy Aikman, who went to UCLA after he was hurt at Oklahoma, and then Barry Switzer called Terry Donahue and said, hey, I have a good guy that can throw the football. So he ended up at UCLA, playing for the Cowboys under Jimmy Johnson. Now he's on the air with Fox Sports. But you're not going to hear Troy Aikman talk like this because he's just going to talk about the play and who he's going to be the color analyst. I'm not saying he should, but the lack of depth for a lot of people who are on the air, it's just a shame. Rod Gilmore, his wife, I think she's the mayor of Alameda County. Rod Gilmore works for ESPN. I used to do some work for him down at Stanford football game. He's an attorney. But even he, as an attorney, you don't hear him talk like this. Jay Billis is an attorney out of Duke. They're on TV all the time. They don't talk about pay inequality and how it's such egregious for the color line, Big C. And one thing that I want to say, too, that's really unspoken of, the African-American woman. Now, you think about this, because this is kind of pushed on by the wayside, too. How many black women do you see patrolling the sidelines other than Lisa Salter and Pam Oliver getting reports? They have a few that are out there. Sage Steele does a great job, but it's about, you can count them on your hand, Big C. And I say that because they're the least highest paid of anyone working the sidelines. And I think for someone not to speak up for black women in the business, too, because the media says you should just be happy you have a job. But there's a lot of people who not only are single moms, they take care of families, and they deserve the same type of equal pay. But if no one's going to speak out for them, then they'll be silent because they're afraid to speak out for themselves, Big C. And that's why this Charlton and Big C Sports. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, we always strive for equality. Title IX created great opportunities for women.
Yeah.
But as you spoke about, African-American women were on the back shelf when it came to Title IX, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're slowly creeping into the industry, but, you almost make it seem like they're unintelligent and can't handle the answers and the questions, because when you look at it, I'm going to think that they're more adept to relating to an African-American athlete than an Anglo sideline reporter.
Yeah.
She's almost like a fish out of water. She's gone into a position where it's almost intimidating and challenging.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at these African-American female reporters, Charlton, they grew up in an African-American lifestyle, so having a conversation with an African-American athlete is normalcy for them, Charlton. But they don't present the opportunity.
They're not given.
What happens with these networks, Charlton, if you put these African-American women out there and they excel beyond their Caucasian counterparts, Charlton, it almost makes the network looks bad.
Yeah.
Because they hid this hidden jewel for a long time. And we have great, intelligent African-American women that can handle any of these jobs, Charlton, because even when you look at them coming out as former college athletes who majored in journalism.
Yeah, most have their degrees.
This has been a natural process and part of their lives. They just don't get the opportunity because they're not blonde hair, blue eyes, standing there. When I sit there and I listen to some of the inept questions that are asked by these Caucasian women of players and coaches, it's almost embarrassing. And you're saying this is the best that the network can do. At least give her a cue card to read from,
you see,
or even talking to her ear, because she lacks depth in the question that she's asked.
Now, see, I think that's a good point, because I look at Hannah Storm, and Hannah Storm does an excellent job. And there are a lot of women who do a great job, black and white. But I know, just like the white quarterback, and I'm going to say it because that's what it is. When they think Andrew Luck, who's never won anything, not even at Stanford did he win a Rose Bowl. In fact, they lost in the Fiesta Bowl to Oklahoma State. So he didn't win that game either. So how is he the highest paid quarterback in the history of the game? Tom Brady's has been a lot more successful than Andrew Luck, but they keep pumping this guy based on what they want you to believe, the same way they pumped Carson Wentz and Jeff Goff. They're not pumping you based on his stats and what he's done. Even at Stanford, he was not that great of a player, but he had Coach Harbaugh, who had that white coach bias, and also being at Stanford, which is a great university. But I just don't see how David Shaw's the number 8th paid coach in the Pac-12, and they keep hyping certain athletes. Now, I just want to bring this up. T. Martin played at Tennessee. I think he's the last quarterback at Tennessee to win a national championship.
The only quarterback
To win a
national championship the year after Peyton Manning had left.
Exactly.
Was the overall number one quarterback. T. Martin won the championship, and he didn't go in the draft, Charles, until the 6th round the following year to the Steelers.
So that
played around as a journeyman, ended his career, I believe, with the Oakland Raiders also.
That is so powerful, Big C, because people think, they don't even think about that. And when it comes to thinking, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealers, home of the all-new F-150. They build it for a tough. When you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, and secure. Contact Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. Let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. You can also send out a donation to Charlton and Big C Sports. So, Big C, I want to bring this up because it keeps irritating me. It's like, you know how you good old boys in the South, when you get an itch, you know, most people go to the doctor, they get some Neosporin, but you guys pour some gasoline on the itch. That's what I've heard about some of you guys. The gasoline. You know. Okay. Be careful when you smoke around the guys that want to fix everything with gasoline, okay, Big C? I tell you, you guys live a little bit different, but I'm learning to be more cultural, okay, Big C? But I just want to bring this up because it's so important. And I talked to some Caucasian friends of mine and said, Charlton, you guys are always talking about, you know, pro-black this or pro-black that. I said, no, not at all. I want you to watch something. I did some work with a guy covering the NFL back in 1996. I still see him on the sideline when the Lakers are on TV. And I remember him brought this point up one time. He said, Charlton, if you see a lot of black guys in a BMW, you know they're up to no good. And I said, well, wait a minute, man. I'm driving a BMW right now. He said, well, you're different. And I said, how am I different? He says, well, you're different. He didn't know what to say, but he was so comfortable saying it that I know it goes on in the corporate world. This guy was always given work when I had to apply on a weekly basis. And I'm just saying this because if people on the inside don't talk about the bias, you're never going to hear it from anybody else. And I'm opening doors for the next young person of color, male and female, that wants to get into this business. Just like you said, Big C, you got to have your own show. So I'm going to make this point here. If you think about a guy like Andrew Luck, who's built, you would think he's Russell Wilson. You would think he's Tom Brady. I mean, Andrew Luck hasn't even gone to a Super Bowl, but there are a lot of African-American quarterbacks who have been there. Half of the ones who started have been there. Whether you're talking about a Steve McNair, or you're talking about Russell Wilson, or Cam Newton, or even if you go back to Doug Williams. The point that I'm making is, Big C, they've had to overcome something that's almost invisible now. I know you good old boys down south, they used to have this thing called colored restrooms and colored drinking fountains. Well, they took the signs off now, but sometimes the attitude is still the same. And when it comes to money, which is how you measure your life, Andrew Luck, God bless him to make that kind of money, but how is he worth much more than RG3? Neither of them have been to a Super Bowl. One is more athletic than the other, Big C. But Andrew has so much media hype behind the white quarterback issue. I just want to bring attention to it so people, unlike myself and you, can pay attention as well, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, when you look at Andrew Luck, Charlton, versus RG3 gets injured, ends up in a backup role, and shuffled off to a new team. The quarterback that was backing him up that took over starting role, Charlton, who won the equal amount of games that RG3 did in his first year as a starter, 10 games, is getting $20 million. $20 million is what the Redskins are paying Kirk Cousins. Then they offered RG3 $20 million.
No, they showed him the door. They showed him the door.
When he took the team to the playoffs as a rookie, got injured, played with a torn knee, they didn't offer him $20 million, Charlton. He had to settle for a 2-year, $14 million contract, even though that's not Pence, but a 2-year, $14 million contract with the Cleveland Browns. Kirk Cousins gets $20 million after winning only 10 games. So when you look at the comparison, it's as clear as we talk about black and white.
Yeah.
How do you rate this young African-American quarterback as a lesser quarterback? And when you look at the winning percentage in the NFL, RG3 and Andrew Luck are basically the same. But we talked about that also with Mark Sanchez and a Latin American quarterback in the NFL who played at USC. It was a first-round draft pick, 6th pick overall with the New York Jets 7 years ago.
Yeah.
The Jets, the back-to-back AFC Championship games where they lost against the Patriots, but no one is talking about paying him $20 million a year, Charlton. They've had the success of the white quarterbacks, the African-American quarterback and the Hispanic quarterback.
Well, also,
they've had the same success of two white quarterbacks, nowhere as successful financially as those quarterbacks, Charlton. Why is that? Who runs this league? Who sits there and sets the racial barrier financially other than the commissioner and the owners, Charlton?
Well, see, Big C, and someone has to bring it up. That's why we have Charlton and Big C Sports. This final part is brought to you by United Labor. Guaranteed life insurance up to $100,000. No medical questions. Also by Goosehead Property and Casualty Insurance. We beat about 98% of the people when it comes to a quote. And also, One Life America Life Insurance Company, the leaders in final expense. You can follow us on Charlton and Big C Sports. Make sure you send out a tweet and let us know that you heard about it on Charlton and Big C Sports. Big C, as we close out in the final 2 minutes of the program, I just want to bring this up to you because I want to talk more about it as we go out throughout the week. You know, USC and Alabama are playing this great college football game, and everyone knows that USC is going to win because they bring back 16 starters, and a lot of these guys, they're lifting weights right now because Lynn Swan has them out there working out in the heat so they can go down and beat you good old boys down south, Big C.
You said they bring back 16 starters from a losing program.
No, they even got the white horse tuned up. This guy, he's even in greater shape. They're feeding him oats and barley, Big C.
No, help me out, Charlton. They're bringing back 16 starters from the conference championship team?
No, well, see, they were cheated in a lot of those games, Big C.
They're bringing back 16 starters that don't know what winning the championship is all
Well,
about.
we're going to change that. But see, you got to understand, Lynn Swan's going to change that, Big C. Now, you know, it's a big story out here in the Pac-12 because USC's playing Alabama. Great traditional football. What's the thought in the Southeastern Conference? Is that game just as big to them as it is out here for the historical perspective, Big C?
Well, no, we play preseason games
Okay.
lesser conferences all the time. It's a big deal. You know, and really, we only look at that as the second biggest game in the SEC to start the season. You got to realize Tennessee with Virginia Tech in front of 150,000 people.
Wow.
You know, at Daytona Raceway. So when you think about USC and Alabama, yes, I mean, you can go back to the legacy of the late 60s and 70s, Charlton, with those games and stuff. But the game has transited so much since then. We talked about the evolution of the African-American player in the SEC that really didn't exist the last time these two teams played a big game.
Yeah.
But now that has changed. change. You know, there's some dominant athletes. You know, you look at Nick Saban and what he has done as a coach at Alabama. You look at the evolution. We talked about Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah.
Having a black head coach in the SEC.
In Texas, of all places. Also, Texas has one, too, yeah.
In Texas. And he's been very effective. Not only that, they expanded the stadium to 120,000 seats.
And that's what they can pay the players more money, from what I understand, Big C.
Well, you know, it all depends on how you slice that loaf, Charlton,
okay.
You know, and pass out that sandwich.
Okay.
You know, when you look at the impactfulness in the SEC and college football, Charlton, of the African-American athletes, how the game has grown over the last 50 years from the involvement of the African-American athletes.
Yeah.
Games were also ran games. I mean, Charlton, they weren't that exciting. They weren't that explosive. You had middle-of-the-road athletes and Anglo athletes, Charlton. Now that you have these superior African-American athletes, you look at the growth of the stadiums, you look at the growth of money in college football and even in professional football and basketball, Charlton, how the monies have grown exponentially, and it's all behind the African-American athletes.
Yeah.
These stadiums have become mega stadiums because you have so much talent. And when you look at the fanfare behind them, yes, they're all Anglos. 95% of all the stadiums are Anglos, sitting there watching these tremendous athletes, and they can't get anything out of it financially as an athlete.
Yeah.
That needs to change.
Well,
but
Big
we're
C,
going to get to a point where there's going to become an attrition as far as the money goes,
Yeah.
and they're going to have no choice.
Yeah.
Once all the athletes band together, Charlton, like the athletes at Northwestern 2 years ago,
Yeah.
then we're going to sue. When the athletes as a unilateral group say we're not going to play this weekend,
Yeah.
that's the only way that college football and NCAA is going to allow them to pay. When they got to take a weekend and take a couple $1 billion loss across the table,
Yeah.
because the athletes refuse to play, the athletes have more clout than what people give them credence for, Charlton.
Well, Big C, speaking of cloud, I just want to say tonight's it's a great night for sports, and also the lottery in California. You know, on Friday night, the Mega Millions, $450 million. I hear it's going to be won by Charlton and Big C. But also, I want to say Pam Oliver. I met her back in '96. A great reporter. You have Josina Adams. You have Carrie Champion, Lisa Salters. They do a phenomenal job. I hope that the door is more open for young African-American women and also Latina women to get into the broadcast business. And I know sometimes it feels like you already have one. Why do you need three? Well, if my counterparts can have 80% of the people in the business, just open the door for everybody. And speaking of opening the door, we'll keep doing it for you every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on Charlton Big C Sports. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.